My name's Courtney. I'll just line that up a little bit. And tonight we're going to look at some ethics and governance and a little bit of an ethical dilemma. So I've got Matt here in technical support, and please don't ask if it's recorded. It is recorded. So we'll go from there. Now, the question is resolving ethical dilemmas. Get ready for your exam. Trolleys and lifeboats. So hopefully you've seen these questions before, but if you haven't, well, here's a good time to come across them. But before I go through the questions, I want to do a little bit of a check-in. Firstly, can you just do a thumbs up or something to acknowledge you can hear me clearly and understand what's going on? Great. Cool. So, okay, system's working, audio's working, video's working. Brilliant. And if not, there's not much I can do about it other than log back out, log back in, see how it goes. All right, that's really good. The two things I want to talk about. One, if you're studying ethics and governance and you ask questions in Facebook in the Messenger chat and you haven't done the work, like basic things like read the FAQs, check out the key dates, a little bit tedious to get the same questions over and over because it says that you haven't done a little bit of work. So please read the FAQs, have a look at our videos. The number of times people go, oh, I don't understand question 2.10. Well, we have a whole page FAQ. If it doesn't make sense after that, we'll try and help you. But please do the hard work first. It's a little bit lazy. Second thing is small bursts of systematic study every single day. If you do 15, 20, 30 minutes of study in a block, that's going to be far more effective than trying to do 3 or 4 hour blocks where you can't learn and remember that many things. So what I want you to do is open the book. Watch a video, read that bit in the book. I get that, highlight a few things, maybe make a few notes in the comments, come back and do a summary, keep going, then do a quiz. One of the things that frustrates me, I guess, because I've been doing this for a long, long time, is people say, oh, the exam was really tough, far, far harder than the practice exams, for example. And then I go, well, what was your practice exam result? Oh, yeah, I got the average, 43 out of 61 on the multiple choice. You're like, well, hang on a sec. So you got nearly 1/3 of the exam wrong. But you're talking about how easy it is. It's not really like that. The other thing is the fail rate is high, over 30%. But the majority of people who fail haven't done the work. It's not like they worked incredibly hard and then they failed. A lot of these people haven't read the study guide to the end, haven't done systematic study because it's hard. We acknowledge it's incredibly hard. You have life, you have work, you have family, you have commitments, and then you've got this study guide. It's really hard to just pick it up and open. You don't have classes like university to turn up to. But if you do the reading and you keep on track, you should go to the final exam and go, oh, that was actually reasonably easy. They asked me questions about the accounting profession and ethics and cartel conduct and director's duties and corporate social responsibility, and I knew all the answers. That's how it should be. So with that, my encouragement to you is the next thing, and I sent this in the email, write down your answers. This is what's extraordinary. People say, oh, I need help me study, give me some guidance. And so I say, practice writing down your answers, because in your exam, you'll have to not write, but type your answers. So practice actually formulating an answer and presenting it. And people go, oh yeah, can you give me a better tip than that? Because that sounds like boring, hard work. I'd rather read the question. And so my question to you, did you do the question? And did you write out an answer? So thumbs up if you wrote out an answer, thumbs down or nearly, maybe I'm getting to it if you haven't yet. Because imagine look, Australia women's soccer team, how fantastic are they? Do you think that they practice penalty shots by watching them on TV? Oh yeah, I had a look at that. You know, one day it might be a penalty shootout against France and I'd love to win, but I really could not be stuffed practicing my penalties. That's the frustration I have when people go, oh yeah, I couldn't be bothered writing an answer. So in this, you actually have to write and write and write. And when you get a law question, you have to write. And when you get a governance question, writing out the answers. And you might say that takes a lot of time. Yes, that's the space. So yeah, it's doing the work. Totally understand that. Got someone trying to from the group chat. That's not going to happen. So please, if it's you trying to call me, please stop. There wasn't much time. The purpose of sending it out to you and then saying, write out your answer, come to the live webinar is exactly that. In the exam, I don't want you to treat this like an essay where you have 4 hours. You got 10 minutes. So you've only got 10 minutes to to do that. So here is the trolley problem. All right, and it's a famous ethical dilemma. There is a tram or a trolley. They call it a trolley. It's the United States. So imagine it's coming down the railway tracks, and ahead on the tracks, 5 people tied up, unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. You're standing some distance off, and you either have to choose to do nothing, but 5 people will die. But if you divert the trolley, only 1 person will die. So what do you do? So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is type your answer. You can either type number 1 or number 2. There are no alternatives in the chat box. So what are you going to do? Are you going to do something or nothing? Pretty simple. So a bunch of people, number 2, pull a lever. All right. So now some person said 1, and someone said greatest good for the greatest number, 2. Okay, this is fantastic. The reason we give you these kind of ethical dilemmas, it's a bit like if you've watched you steal the drugs to life. This is extraordinary. I don't know doing it, so I'm a little bit frustrated. Just stop it. All right. So what we've got is an ethical choice. Now, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. There are just different ethical frameworks. So once you use this technique, and I love that different people are 1 and 2. You are both correct. There is no right answer. There are just different frameworks. But now you can understand more about yourself in terms of egoism, utilitarianism, justice, fair, rights, sharing, all of those types of things. So if you picked number 2, pulling the lever, you've made a decision to save 5 people's life and sacrifice 1 person's life. Fine. What ethical framework is that mostly closely linked to? Where do you think it sits? Yeah. So you've instincted utilitarianism framework. So we use fancy words like utilitarianism to help explain what we might do naturally. Now, some people picked option 1 to do nothing. Which framework do you think if you picked option 1, which framework do you think you're most closely linked to? So it could be rights theory, it could be egos theory. It's a little bit trickier here. Now, if you have the choice between pulling the lever and it hits you or hits 5 people, egoism probably be more linked because the best outcome for yourself. So doing nothing, I think, does link to egoism, because if you do nothing, it could, you can say, I didn't have to make the choice. It's not my problem. I didn't create this situation. It's not fair to put it on me. So for my self-interest, I'm stepping away from the issue. Or you might look at the rights of the person who is doing nothing wrong all by themselves. You're actively choosing to sacrifice them for someone else. What gives you that right to choose? So we have, yeah, it's a confronting situation. It really is. So the next situation I want to look at, and we'll go through the frameworks, because this is the point. The point of these isn't what's right or wrong. The point is, how do we work through a scenario, get to the answer? Now, in an exam, you're going to get a situation like this, but it's going to be accounting based, and then you just work through the steps. And it often only takes 5 or 10 minutes if you've practiced. So you're in a lifeboat, there's 50 people. There's room for 10 more, but there's 100 in the water. What happens next? So you can do nothing and protect the people already there. You could try and save all 100 and probably drown everyone, or you could accept 10 more people, which sounds good, but who makes the decision? Who makes the decision for accepting the 10? So now this is a real life situation, right? There's a storm, everything's happening. You're in the boat. Are you going to row away? That's option 1. Are you going to try and select 10? Or are you going to try and save like as many people as possible? 1, 2, or 3. Cool to see a bunch. Yeah. So people, and so there's some real life scenarios about this. Luckily, we don't see as many sinking ships anymore. But what used to happen was you might have 10 people get in the boat and the other 50 or 80 or whatever hold on to the sides. But Donna, you raised the right point. if 100 people, if you try and save them all, everyone dies. But that at least is equality. That's justice in a sense. We all die together. It's incredibly stressful. Yeah, people can do that. So, if you've watched Titanic, you'll see an example of that. How do we make this work? Now, in the Titanic situation, some lifeboats actually rowed away from everyone else. They didn't rescue anyone. They could have, because they wanted to save themselves. Definitely an egoist approach. The greatest good for the greatest number, well, you might try and save the 100, but that doesn't save 100. That kills everyone. So the greatest good for everyone would be to try and take on 6 more people. But how do you choose? What is the fairest? Do you choose women first, children first, pregnant people first, old people? Who decides? And in the old days, they used to talk about women and children first, and men went down with the ship if there wasn't enough space. That was the hierarchy. Vulnerable ones first. Yeah. So you could look after the elderly, they deserve it, or the youth, who, if you have to choose, do you choose someone who has more life ahead of them, or do you try and choose equally? So the great thing about these scenarios is we don't have the correct answer. We just have different answers. So, oh man, wow. All right, I think I've got someone in the Ethics and Governance Facebook group trying to create a live chat. That's what's causing the buzzing and the confusion. So let's have a look at the ones who swims to the boat first. Why not? They're the fittest, they're the strongest. So how do we do that? So this is the hierarchy. And people are good at putting a hierarchy in place in theory, but then you get into practice. So in the hospitals in the last few years, if, for example, someone has not had a COVID vaccination versus someone else, if they have to choose between transplants, there's a ranking hierarchy. If someone has been a smoker and a drinker versus someone who hasn't, there's a ranking hierarchy in terms of who might get support with an organ or protection. Do nothing, save the 50. These are great. Now, the philosophical model first. Let's have a look at this with the trolley problem. Now, if you got given this as an essay, you could write paragraphs. But in a CPA exam, it's just about a couple of key points. You could just write dot points, but I don't recommend it. Dot points tend to capture the key component, but miss out on explanation. So I used to be a CPA chief examiner for about 10 years. And what I found consistently was that people who wrote with dot points scored some marks, but not all marks, even though they knew the answer, because they didn't explain enough. So I'm not talking about long essays, but dot points lead people to not finishing their sentences and missing out on a key point. So, for example, in this case, if you were in the lifeboat and you decided to row away, you can see that you're taking an ethical egoist approach. So are the benefits greater than the harms to oneself? Yes, if I row away. So if you wrote in a dot point, yeah, it's ethical egoist to do this, that's correct. But why? Because it's protected myself from everyone else. So if you're writing something else, you would say, are the benefits greater than harms to oneself? In the lifeboat, if we row away from everyone, at least we save ourselves. That's 50 people saved. Then we've got, are the benefits greater than harms to others? And the answer here is a little bit trickier, but yeah, it depends. If you could save the whole 100, then that would be great, but you can't. You can only save 10. So you would suggest that you have an obligation to save 10 people. That is the greatest benefit to the greatest number. Now, who chooses? Utilitarianism doesn't really answer that question because it's just counting the greatest good to the greatest number. Someone just wrote, you can't use the IRAC method. No. So ethics module 2 uses the philosophical model, the code of ethics model, and the AAA model. So use those for ethics questions. Then when we get to module 3, we'll look at IRAC methods for module 3 and module 4. What about the rights of stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders in this situation? There's people in the boat and there's people out of the boat. So the rights of the stakeholders are the people in the boat, they're going to be saved. But of the 100 in the water, how can you fairly choose between these? And that's the problem with number 4. how do you choose the benefits and burdens? The benefits are in the boat, the burden is drowning. It's a fairly simple model. How do you make sure it's justly distributed? Is it based on, so do you remember the 3 different types of justice? See if you can pop them in the chat box. Yeah, based on need, merit, and one more, equality. Absolutely. So equality, you would have to randomly select maybe, because that's equally sharing, or need, who are the youngest or the most in need or pregnant or however it works, or women and children first, or you might say old people have done the best to raise everyone. So that's that and merit. There's another lifeboat example where you choose who goes in. Do you choose the person who's a doctor? Do you choose the person who's 24 and fit? Do you choose the person who's a millionaire? Do you choose someone who's 55 who has illnesses? How do we measure this up? So this model doesn't really bring you to a conclusion, and that's a key point I want to raise today. What it does force you to do is think about the ethical dilemma from all sides. It's very easy to just jump straight to the answer, but what this does is say, stop, don't make your decision yet. What are the benefits to me? What is the benefits to the greater group? What are the rights of everyone? And is it fair amongst the distribution about who gets selected, who doesn't get selected? So that's the philosophical model in action. It's forcing you to think about each of the ethical perspectives to come to a conclusion. If we get to the AAA model, and we'll keep going with the lifeboat example first, and we'll come back to the trolley problem. What are the facts? Well, it's pretty simple. You're in the lifeboat. You either save 50, 60, or try and save 100 and probably cause trouble. What are the ethical issues? So the ethical issues here are, do you choose someone to be saved, and how do you choose them? Or do you just rescue yourself? What are the norms, principles, and values? So if you're doing this in an exam, you can just start off with the facts as a heading, and then you don't really need to summarize much because the exam itself will give you the facts. Ethical issues. So in accounting, the ethical issues are normally self-interest versus integrity, or self-interest versus the public interest, or putting yourself first, or fear of losing your job versus this. So it's fairly easy. In this one, the ethical issue is, how do we decide who to save? What gives us the right to decide who gets to live and who doesn't? How do we weigh that up? So the norms, principles, and values. So in a shipping situation, if we go back in time, it was always women and children first. And there's some logic to that. So there's some biological logic, which is that women help the human race reproduce. And it also takes longer for one woman can have one child at a time. But one man can father many women at once. So you need less men than you do women if you're all going to be stuck on a desert island and needed to repopulate. So women and children first is the children of your future generation. They're going to be working, living longer. So people who've lived longer, or men, are a little bit more redundant. So it's very practical and a very utilitarian perspective to take women and children first. Then what are the alternatives? What's good here is it's specified for you. Now, in an exam, this is an example where people miss out on marks. It's often really simple. The person can do this or this, but people don't write that down. And all you have to do is, the alternative is row your boat away, try and rescue 10, try and rescue 100. That's it. The question's not asking more than that, but take the time to write it down. What is the best option? And in this case, you might say, well, we are going to focus on norms, principles, and values. The best option would be to identify children in the water and try and rescue 10 children. You might even squeeze 12 children in because they're smaller and there's more space. So the best option, consistent with, if we had a norm and principle that said women and children first, that would be the best option. Rescuing 10 women of probably childbearing age who have the greatest opportunity to contribute to human society into the future. So then we get, what are the consequences? The consequences of each of your choices will be, well, if 50 of you are saved, then 60 people die. If you try and rescue 10 more, then 60 people will live. But if you tried to rescue all 100 people, all of you would die. So once again, these are only very simple statements. You don't have to write a long essay. Someone said, can I say point 3 again? One of the key norms, principles, or values here is the idea that women and children should be saved first where possible, if there's a choice between lives. So someone just said, well, what if there are more than 10 pregnant women? That's the reality of always choosing. Someone has to choose. So you can choose randomly, or you can try and select based on a hierarchy. Now, if you wanted to select those people, how would you choose them? You have to have a hierarchy in your mind, which is norms, principles, and values. Now, different cultures might choose very differently. That's just the historical Western approach. So someone said, since the point 5 is aligned with point 3, yeah, can we say that when we answer point 3 already? Not really. So the norms, principles, and values, yeah, that's stating them. And then this is saying what is best from a deontological perspective. So what is the best in terms of norms, principles? So if we're looking at an accounting issue, the norms and principles are going to be our fundamental principles: integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, professional behaviour, duty of care. These are the things that we measure with. And so if something clashes with that, then we've got a problem. Then this is a teleological approach. What's the outcome? And then we look at what actually happens. So what we're doing is a bit like the philosophical model weighs up deontological issues and teleological. That's sort of happening here. So we write down what are the issues. We look at our norms and principles. That helps us evaluate deontologically. Then we look at the consequences, and then we make our choice. So it's forcing us to think it through to the end. Yep, so you can choose human rights here. That's a norm, principle, and value, but how do you phrase that? So you might say, we have to choose based on rights, human rights. But how will that create a decision-making framework? So I'll give you an example. I used to do life-saving training, go back, 30 years. And the thing we are taught, if there is an incident with multiple people in the water, if you go into a hospital, they call it triage. You go into emergency and they triage you, and they put the most injured person at the front of the line. So you might have in normal life, if you go to the bank, the first person in the queue gets dealt with first. If you go to the bank in India, depending on your caste, you might have to wait your turn until everyone of every other caste has been dealt with. So even when we're queuing in different cultures, different norms and principles and values. So that's for the bank. Then we go to hospital, the most injured person gets looked after first. But then in life-saving, you actually have to rescue the least vulnerable person first, because if you go and rescue the most vulnerable person, by the time you've done that, the least vulnerable person may be in even more distress. So you're supposed to rescue the most vulnerable person first, then the second most vulnerable, then the third. That is the norms and principles based on the greatest chance of saving the greatest number of people. So it takes a utilitarian perspective. Then you have to make a decision. And this is amazing, that thousands of candidates, so up to 5,000 people do this exam every semester, and thousands don't write an answer because they're too scared. The decision is either paddle away or rescue 10 or try and rescue 100, but you have to make the decision. Too many people are too scared to make a commitment. That's fine, but you will lose the marks. So that's how you do it. Now, a normal answer will normally only be 2 paragraphs long. It's sort of heading based, but not even half a page. So it's not too complicated as we work through. So let's have a quick look at this with the trolley problem again. So the tram is running down the road. It's about to kill 5 people. You can either just do nothing, or you can pull a lever and the trolley diverts and 1 person will die. So is there a right or wrong answer? No. That's why people don't write the answer though. They're so worried they'll get it wrong. They write nothing instead. If you follow this model correctly, if you follow an accounting model, and someone has a choice of being acting with integrity or breaking the law, then it's going to be fairly obvious. And you don't get negative wrong answers, you don't lose marks. So, okay, we've got the trolley problem. Try and see if I can erase the whole screen just for a second. Nope, not easily. So I will, I'll just keep drawing. Are the benefits greater than harms to oneself? This is interesting. What do you think? If you're pulling the levers on this trolley, is it better for you or worse for you personally? Because you're not going to get injured. Which option is better for yourself? Option 1, pull a lever. Make sure I remember. Option 1 is do nothing. Option 2 is pull a lever. So which is better for yourself? All right. So this is an interesting concept, because if you pull a lever, you've deliberately chosen to end someone's life. Whereas if you do nothing, it wasn't your fault. So it's hard to weigh it up, but some people go, I'm totally okay with that. For me, the greatest benefit to me is knowing I saved 4 people's lives. For other people, it'll be like, the greatest benefit for me is to know it's not my fault and I didn't touch it. So, Solomon, that's an interesting point. It depends on the perspective, but legally isn't relevant. So legally is different to ethically, because something can be legal but unethical, and some things can be ethical but illegal. And a good example here from a legal ethical responsibility is if a child is drowning in a lake and you don't go and try and rescue them and you know how to swim, then you actually have a legal burden there and an ethical burden. So pull a lever, save the most people. Cheryl, that's a good point, but that's actually item number 2. So the first question is how do I feel about this? The second question is the greatest benefit. So from a utilitarian perspective, absolutely, pull a lever, save the most people. But if it's left out, one could feel like they could have saved some lives. Yeah. So next, what about the rights? So this is interesting. What about the right of the one worker who was doing nothing wrong and all of a sudden is about to die to save 4 other people's lives? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying just dwell on that person. Very unlucky for them that you pulled a lever and took them out to rescue 4 others. And finally, are the benefits and burdens justly distributed? So what you're effectively saying is the burden is going to be put on one person because the benefit will save 4. So net 4. Once again, this doesn't lead you to a correct answer. You should do number 1 or you should do number 2. What it does is it helps you wrestle with the question from different perspectives. So you think about yourself, how do I feel, ethical egoism? Then you think about the group, utilitarianism. Then you think about the individual who is about to get squished. And then you think about the fairness of the final outcome. Is this the most fair outcome? So in the exam, you might get a multiple choice question that asks you from a utilitarian perspective, what should happen? But those questions are fairly easy. And then there's some multiple choice questions we give you to practice on things like that. And then from a written response question, you would work through the analysis. So I'm just checking the chat. Said, if you're killing a person by trolley, you'll be hanged too. So should I save myself and first do nothing? So that's an ethical egoist perspective as well. Yep. Protect myself. It's not my problem. It just happened. And you can't really be blamed for that. If you did nothing, no one could really blame you for making this choice. The power of this dilemma is there's no natural solution that feels comfortable. And that's what most people do. They try and create a situation where the tram doesn't have a problem and it all works out okay. So yeah, but that's all right. So from the AAA model perspective, if you're writing an answer, what are the facts? The trolley, it's already there. Done. What are the ethical issues? And the ethical issue here is this choice between, do you do nothing and watch people die, or do you sacrifice someone else's life to save other people's lives? Because that person didn't get the choice. You could have asked them, hey, are you willing to sacrifice? Like, go back to this story. What if you were the person on the track and you chose to pull a lever to kill yourself and save 5? All of a sudden, you're like, am I just as happy with that? So that's the ethical issue. What are the norms, principles, and values? Based on what people have been writing, a key norm here is the utilitarian perspective, which is we want to save the greatest number of people that we possibly can. And that makes sense. But other people might say you can't infringe on someone's rights. So you could take a rights theory or the justice of you're unfairly benefiting these 5 people by putting a burden of death onto these other people. Carrie, you've written, do you have to write answers both? No. What would happen is in an exam, it could ask you using teleological perspective or utilitarian perspective, what's the correct answer? Like that could be a multiple choice. Or you could get an ethical dilemma and be asked to evaluate it using the philosophical model or the AAA model. You can't be, otherwise it's too big a question and it takes too long. So you would normally just get one. I've just picked both models. And normally it's the AAA. Donna, what if my family is that one person? Absolutely. What if it's yourself is the one person or someone you know? Now, if you go into YouTube, I've posted the link. The Good Place is a very funny TV show, and they actually do the trolley problem like with a live reenactment, and then they do different variations, including the one person is a friend of yours. So you can keep replaying this situation. What if that killing the one person was you? What if killing that one person was your friend or a family member? What if it was killing that one person was someone you really didn't like? The power of this is it makes you think through, why would you do what you do? Is it based on ethics or something else? So the norms, principles, and values are just how do we make decisions in this way normally? And so they can be consequences based or deontologically based. So the concept of a norm, a principle, or a value is linked to deontological theory. So items 3 and 5 are this deontological perspective. So we've looked at the norms, principles, and values. So right to life, equality, fairness, merit, 5 people, but it seems to keep coming back to 5 people saved versus 1. So what we're sort of seeing is a focus on a utilitarian perspective, the consequences of saving lives. So for most of you, the decision was pull the lever and this will save 5 lives at the sacrifice of 1. So I hope that's helped you just wrestle with these items. But my encouragement to you is write out these answers. Write out the one, would you steal drugs to save your child's life? Write out the ones from the study guide as well. There's a guy called Alex. I think he's being harassed. And we'll go from there. So yes, you do need to list the stakeholders in the AAA approach. So question 2 has 2 components. When we say what are the ethical issues, we're normally framing it between the stakeholders. So in this one, the stakeholders for the trolley problem will be yourself. You have to pull a lever or not, the one person, and the group of 5. So the ethical issues are, do you sacrifice the 1 to save the 5? Can you answer each step just 1 sentence? Yes. Maybe not 1 sentence, but 2 sentences. Yes. The study guide gives you a detailed solution. That's not expected in an exam. An exam would just be, the ethical issues are one sentence, 2 sentences. The norms and principles. People have a right to life, but we also want to save as many lives as possible. What are the alternatives? 1 line, the best option, the consequences. So yeah, it should only be 10 or 12 lines long in total. Thank you, Matt. The 5 are trying to steal the trucks, and that's what's happened. So yeah, the Good Place is when I saw that, I've been teaching the trolley problem for a long time, and then when I saw that, I'm like, oh, these guys are amazing. They just brought it to life so perfectly. All right, so that's me. I just wanted to take some time to explore this, encourage you to practice writing out your answers, wrestle with ethical dilemmas. Another thing is, if you've never heard of the AAA model, it means you haven't read properly to the end of module 2. And if you got that, I've marked an actual CPA exam when a person tried to answer a legal cartel conduct type question with the AAA model. And I've seen someone try and answer a law-based question with the AAA model. It's not good. It literally says to the examiner, I have no idea and I never read my study guide. So please don't do that. Yes, they are. So the practice questions, if you mark, you get your practice exams, we give you the solution to the written response and you'll see the mark allocation. And it's pretty accurate. I don't know if I've marked 10,000 exams, CPA exams in my life, but I'd be pretty close. So yes. Any tips on determining the facts? They're all in the case. That's it. There's nothing extra, no assumptions, no guessing, no. What happens here is people try and invent a situation to save the scenario. There are no other facts, so you have to run with it. The biggest mistake people make, they see a situation, an ethical dilemma, and they interpret that as an intimidation threat. And yet there's no intimidation there. So they normally put intimidation first, then self-interest, and that's wrong. Self-interest normally comes before intimidation. So yeah. Nihao, mid-semester exam covers till what module? Absolutely. Well, I never answer that question because it's in the FAQs. Go to your FAQs, read the FAQs, all there, lots of detail. Is there limited hard copy? Nope. You can bring a filing cabinet worth of paperwork into your exam, but really you just need your index, summary notes, study guide. That's it. Is the midterm exam different from the revisions? Yes, it's just a quiz. It's just a revision quiz that helps you in the middle of the semester to see where you're going. It's harder than the module quizzes. So Nikita, you're too helpful. Now you've told Nihal the answer, and now Nihal will never go read the FAQs. Read the FAQs, they're your friend. It will. They're maths on the same. Normally 2 to 3 sentences at most in the case facts because they're already in your exam. You would be wasting a lot of time to rewrite the whole exam case facts. Keep that part really, really simple. Ian, please read the FAQs. I can't answer that. You have to read the FAQs to find out what's in the mid-semester test. We email you and it's in the FAQ. So we have to point you to the right source so you keep capturing the data. So we should not assume they'll be rescued quickly or after a few days. It's really hard here. The scenarios keep growing. Like what happens, what happens if someone on the boat dies? If you go and do this research has a huge amount of writing on it. Is cannibalism allowed if you're dying and the person has already died? You didn't kill them, but they're dead. Are you allowed to consume them? That happens in real life on lifeboats. It happens when there's been air crashes in certain places. What is the right thing to do? You might say cannibalism is always wrong. You might say that if I do that and stay alive, I'm winning. That's a good thing from an egoist or utilitarian point of view. These videos are always recorded. You never have to ask. On the AAA model, putting norms and principles, is it bounded on the case study? Because you're going to be doing an accounting exam, the norms and principles are pretty much in there. The fundamental principles are listed in APS 110. If you think of something else that you have to bring in, feel free to put it in there. But the norms, so let's, for example, some of the people we've taught in the CPA program come from cultures where price fixing is totally okay. It's okay to fix the price with your competitors to make more money because making money is good. So why not do it? Or looking after your family, even if you're a judge and your family gets caught speeding, you let them off because you have an obligation to family. I wouldn't bring in those kind of alternative ethical frameworks into the exam. I'd stick to the study guide. Do I suggest making a mind map? Yeah, look, I do. So one of the things you'll see when we use our webinar slides, we give you lots of images. We're actually creating, they are a bit like a mind map. If you take a lot of our images and put them on a single page and you try and remember, each image is anchored. So there's one where there's a fellow carrying an elephant and that links to the ethical maps, or there's a referee blowing the whistle, or So the images are designed to be like a mind map that ties it together. So ethics governance module 1, we use a mind map tied a spider diagram mind map to show you the attributes of the profession. So yeah, I think pictures, our brains are designed to understand images. So you can look at an image and it will help you remember. So if you find a good story about cartel conduct, find an image, you'll remember the whole of cartel conduct just by looking at that one picture. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, build a mind map. Yes, you get the correct answers for the mid-semester exam. We give you the correct answers for absolutely everything. That's really interesting because what happens is you do our practice exam, then you see the answers. And once you see the answers, you go, oh, that wasn't so hard. Then you do the CPA exam and you don't get to see the answers straight away. And say, oh, it was so much harder. It just isn't true. And the reality would be, if it was true, the fail rate would be like 98% based on student feedback. The reason why the final exam feels harder is because it's real. It's panic, your adrenaline's up and you're stressed out of your head. Whereas with a practice exam, it's just a practice. The exams are multiple choice. That's a good question. Go and read the FAQ document. Check out the last page of the FAQs. No, you don't need to carry printouts of the various policies mentioned in the study guide. You only need the study guide. That's all you're examined on. If a policy is included, like APS 110, it's reproduced in the study guide already. Now we've got someone answering other people's questions. Don't answer their questions if it's in the FAQ. The midterm exam is not released already. Check the key dates on the website. You'll find that helpful. Fun. You don't need to be stressed out. It's 2 months till exams. Eye in the Sky movie. I'll have to check that out. You can't find previous exam questions. It's like we're 5 weeks into semester. Read the FAQs. There are no previous exam questions from CPA because they do not publish the exam because they reproduce it every semester. Yes, bring in a dictionary. It's an open book exam. You can bring in anything that you want. What is extraordinary is there is so much information on guided learning and we see questions all the time like, I'm really nervous, what do I do about this? And it's like, it's right there. So log in, take a deep breath, just do 20 or 30 minutes a night, a couple of hours on the weekend, keep on top and you should be fine. All right, I think that's pretty much all of it done. If you have any final questions, ask them. Otherwise, keep studying, keep researching, keep writing out your answers, do the module quizzes. Due to week 1, I think we're now in week 4. We call it week 4 based on a 10-week semester. So we kind of assume the shutdown happened and then we restarted the clock from there. So yeah, Jazz Deep. How many chapters are included in the mid-semester test? That's a great question and it's in the FAQs. Check out the FAQs document in your dashboard. Any tips for your exam? Yes, come to webinars like this and handwrite your answers to these questions. It's great practice. Yeah, you can post a question in Messenger. Use the ENG group chat if you want, post it there, or else you can email the inquiries mailbox. Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right, next time we're going to dive into some director's duties, module 3. Ian, great question. Should we advise the live webinars earlier? And the answer is, if we do, hardly anyone turns up. Because if you email people and say it's on now, they come. But if you give people 2 or 3 days notice or a week's notice, they don't actually come. I ran the experiment a week or 2 ago with different subjects. So we will sometimes try and give more time, but it's fascinating to see. If I'd said, come along to a live webinar on Thursday on this topic, everyone go, yeah, and then not actually log in. So I'll try and give 6 or 8 hours notice. And I'll do sometimes later in the evening for those of you being stuck at work. So that's why sometimes I did a Sunday night. Might do a Sunday night, might do a lunchtime. And we'll see how we go. All right. Take care, everyone. Good night.